Hello, and welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today I'm talking with Kramer Morgenthau, ASC. Kramer has an extensive career. He shot Respect recently, Creed 2, Fahrenheit 451, Terminator Genesis, Thor Dark World, shot a couple episodes of Game of Thrones, shot a couple episodes of Boardwalk Empire. The man has an amazing eye, especially in this sort of like fantasy genre, I've noticed. And Chef. Oh, how could I forget Chef? Chef's one of my favorite films of all time. I went so far as to tell the man during our conversation. But today we're talking with Kramer about his work on The Many Saints of Newark, which is obviously the prequel to the Sopranos series. And so, he was very gracious with his time, actually gave me an extra half hour of it in a follow-up interview just so we could talk a little bit more about the film, because we kind of got really into the conversation about cinematography in general up front. So really appreciate that from Kramer, and I really appreciate WB allowing me to see the film a little bit before it came out. So this interview, as you're listening to it, the film just came out, but we did this interview a couple weeks ago. So shout out to WB for that. If you're new to Frame and Reference, this is a weekly-ish, let's say, podcast where I interview cinematographers to talk about the work. Wherever you're listening to this podcast, you just type in Frame and Reference and go subscribe there, and you can listen to more conversations like this. We're up to 35 episodes now or something like that. So it's been a great year for conversations. There's some really amazing ones that I can recommend to you if you'd like. We're also on, Twitter and Instagram if you'd like to follow us there at Frame and Ref Pod, at Frame and Ref Pod. And that's how you can, keep updated if you're not just really on it with the podcast subscriptions. What do you call it? List of your subscriptions and whatever. You know how podcasts work. You're listening to it right now. I'm not going to keep talking, but please do give Frame and Reference a listen and a follow if you enjoy cinematography or just filmmaking in general, because I truly believe it's an excellent product. I hate referring to it as a product. Anyway, without any ados to be furthered, here's my conversation with Kramer Morgenthau, ASC. Were you always a film person? Were you always visual, or did you kind of fall into it in a different way?
I got into cinematography, I would say maybe later than some people. It's more after college. I was always around filmmaking as a kid. My dad was a documentary television producer for PBS, a station in Boston, where I'm from. So I was around film and filmmaking, and my dad had a love for cinema. He had a love of art and music, opera, and ballet, and it's a true, lover of art, and I feel like that kind of rubbed off on me growing up. But I wanted to be a musician originally, and then kind of stumbled my way into cinema. I was at university and kind of followed a friend of mine into a history of film class, and an amazing professor. And it's almost a cliche, but I watched Citizen Kane, and I was just floored, and I was like, "This is it." This is kind of cinema is sort of the culmination of everything, of music, of dance, of painting, of storytelling, of poetry, acting, theater, all kind of comes together with the cinema. And it's sort of like the art form of art our century. That's such a young art form, and I just was smitten. And after college, I started PAing on films uh, in New York City, and started gravitating towards the camera and the visual side of things early on, because that's kind of who I am as a person, is more visual and less verbal, and kind of tied into the same side of the brain as music, I feel like. And also, originally my interest in film was more like political documentaries, and I came a little bit disillusioned in documentary uh, I felt limited by it, and by politics, and kind of wanted to go into kind of a more poetic side of things, and stumbled my way into cinematography, and had no idea if I was any good at it, and was in a relationship with somebody at the time who was really supportive, and was like, you can do this. And I was very, very young, and in my 20s, and would go into NYU at the time. I didn't go to NYU, but you could, at that time before 9/11, you could just walk into any building, and
Right.
there was a bulletin board with people looking for cinematographers to shoot their student film, and there was no Craigslist or any, tear off a piece of paper with a phone number, and I shot some student films and for various filmmakers, and one of them led to shooting a film in India later on, and I know some of those people from that time period, and some of my early breaks were shooting documentaries, music documentaries, and little by little cobbling together a reel, and I don't know where to stop the story, but
wherever you're comfortable, one thing I've talked to a lot of DPs about is a lot of people seem to come from sort of a musical background, and I'm wondering, A, like, what was your instrument, but B, where do you see the sort of analogous strokes between cinematography or filmmaking in general and music? Because I find that, like, especially editing my own stuff, I can't get it together until I have the song underneath it. If that's the appropriate thing, even if it's something that isn't cut to music, it's always like that sets the tone, and then you can kind of the flow and the contrast and everything kind of starts to stick. But yeah, I've yet to be able to articulate kind of where music and film are so interlinked in my head.
Yeah, I think there are brain studies on that, and left brain and right brain, and because I'm not right-brained, or I couldn't tell you which side of the brain it is actually.
Sure, yeah,
but
me too.
It's the same side of the brain. Um, Visual art and music, and I could be wrong, but I believe that. And also, I'm dyslexic, and therefore, and as a kid, I thought that I was, kind of a loser, and as a grown man, I learned, after many, many decades, that it's my gift. And it means that doesn't mean that I have any less intelligence than anybody else. It means that my brain is wired completely differently than so-called, normies, and that because your brain's wired differently, things enter your brain in a different way, and maybe you kind of hear the music and you feel the music. If I hear a piece of music, I hear it again the entire song is playing in my head for days and days and days. And if I see a piece of light and the way it's coming in the window and the way it's kind of bouncing on the floor behind me and coming up and kind of wrapping around me, like I record that. And
Yeah.
and so it imprints in me differently than words may not imprint, and I may not interact with, verbal type things in the same way, or read quickly, but I can read light very quickly. I can read musical phrase, and so it's, don't want to sound too pretentious or
No,
like
no.
some sort of God's gift to the planet, but it's just sort of that's who I am, and it took me a long time to realize that's who I am, and it's a gift. It's not a curse. It's a and I luckily I found cinematography because I have no idea what I would have done. I would have been a horrible person with an office job if I had to do that.
Yeah, for me, I have what I've now only very recently. I also have a supportive girlfriend who informed me that I have dyscalculia, which is dyslexia with numbers.
Yeah.
And that, did you experience in school becoming so, like in math class, I would get frustrated to the point of tears because I couldn't explain why math was so like viscerally, I guess, annoying to me. I couldn't articulate why I needed to get out of this room because everyone wanted me to do stuff that I couldn't do. And that often pushed me towards kind of like you're saying, like art, or at the time it was computers, because those had just sort of came out and they were something I could dig into and build almost like Legos and stuff. But
I
did you
don't know about
experience that growing up?
yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, and math was very hard for me, but actually, if you look at dyslexia and even just the word dys, means, you're fucked up, and that I don't even like that. So it's like dyscalculia. Actually, I can do math, but the way I actually add things up is completely different than other people. I will take to add something. I'll like, well, it's this one that you stack with this number, and then you bring this number in this way. It's just, again, you're doing, you look at some of the great dyslexics like Albert Einstein. And so, yeah, maybe he didn't do things normally, but because of that, he had a distance from it and had a way of coming in a different way, and like kind of could see a big picture. And it's kind of almost like because you can't do it in the conventional way, you see a big picture, and then you can step back from a movie that you're shooting and see, not just this light plus that light plus that light, but it's like, what story are we telling? What are these characters feeling? What am I feeling? Why, do I feel like the light should come from here? I can't explain it, but I just feel that. And, you know,
Yeah, that's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently. Is whatever's normal, whatever's not normal, but whatever is currently in vogue, let's say, becomes boring. And so whenever people can bring a new, I suppose that makes sense. The way that you kind of generally process the world, if it's slightly off center, probably does make people more interested in the way that you think if it's applied, appropriately. No one wants to think different. No one wants you to think differently in that office job, but something more creative definitely is a better approach. But also, I've really been thinking about how, like, feeling, being like that what you're saying about you might not be able to explain it, but the way that you feel maybe light is supposed to be applied in a certain scene or something like that is way more important than the technically correct. I know on the lower end, I shouldn't say lower, but the more amateur end of the filmmaking spectrum, like maybe the YouTube sort of generation, there's a lot of technically correct. Oh, you should buy this lens because it's the best. You should buy this light because it's the best one. And there's not a lot of thinking happening. It's a lot more, there's not a lot of feeling happening. There's a lot more thinking. that left brain, right brain thing, I think.
Yeah.
And
I
so,
mean, we
yeah,
all fall into that, trying to, you know, the trend or getting into becoming a gearhead and getting uh, so immersed in the gear that you forget about what the most important thing is what is not the camera, but what's in front of the camera. And, it can be any camera and any lens and um, in the hands of uh, somebody that's trying to do something special. That's what, I don't know, special, but anyway, trying to do something. It's what you're doing with it. And I don't get excited about film stock or, sensors. I mean, I do, of course I do, but
obsess over it.
I don't obsess over it. And I kind of try to actually push away from it. And I kind of have it's like sometimes I push away and then sometimes I push away too far and I get too distant from it. And I'm like, oh my God, there's all this new gear and it's incredible. And some of these small cameras are just, like the Sony A7, it's just
Sure.
at the Sony A7S3. Is that the one? It just,
Yeah, I think they came out with the 4 recently, but yeah, that's
uh,
huge.
just incredible images. And on a Ronin R2 or the
That
S2.
sounds right. I'm not a gimbal person really, but yeah, the Ronins
I'm
are.
not either, but I recently have gotten into them because we shot a lot of um, previs with the music numbers on this film I'm on now, just giant musical 50 dancers and song and dance and figuring out how to shoot it. We shot all the songs in prep with Sony A7s and the Ronin
I think it's the R2.
R2 and just brilliant. I would love to make a movie with these cameras and it kind of all this other tech is happening and it's happening so fast and it's kind of meeting in the middle and you've got the iPhone 13 where they're like saying oh you don't need to be a filmmaker and but hey it's all interesting and you just don't think that there's only one way to do things and I use these giant cameras and I see these tiny cameras I get excited so
I started film school prior to the 5D or the Red coming out, like right before. So I learned on 16 mil or just like mini DV cameras, And I'm wondering, can you imagine what your college experience would have been like if you had an A7 or something like ready to roll? Like how that would have changed the way they tried to even teach us filmmaking, let alone like. Because now I feel like students are even like now I went to Arizona State. Apparently the film school has tons of Reds now, and they were making us all fight over 1.5D back in the day. And so we had to spend all our time, writing and focusing on story, which is stupid. No one cares about story. We all want to film things. How do you think that would have changed your like upbringing in film? Is having like access to all that equipment?
I think it would have been revolutionary, but at the same time, I think in the end, it's the same thing. It is about story. It is about characters. It is about what you're doing with it. I was shooting with Super 8. I was shot video, in college, but it was VHS. And but I think I would have done the same thing with an A7S3. It's it just would have been a hell of a lot easier, and probably would have gone into much deeper direction. I shot a lot of my early stuff on a high 8.
Right.
Because that's what you shoot what's available to you. But I think it's with all the tech in the world, it's still it's about the ideas and don't see people breaking through just because of the tech. You see people breaking through because of the ideas.
Do you think that the immediacy of the digital cinema technology has made, or potentially is making people maybe a little complacent, like not doing the work? So, sort of making it's so easy to quote unquote make a film now that maybe people aren't focusing on story. And I know this is a leading question because this is how I feel, and are more just trying to make pretty pictures. It does feel that way to me.
I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I feel like
Oh, perfect.
uh, the technology is forcing people to be, because there's such a proliferation of images, it's harder to stand out
Yeah.
visually, and it's driving people to do more and more interesting stuff. Um, you go on Instagram and you see 100,000 incredible images. So that one image that you make is it's harder to, there's so much more visual noise, but also some visual brilliance in there, and it's harder to have your works, it used to be, there'd be like one movie and you go to the cinema and you see it. Now you go on Instagram and you see 100,000 incredible images in the flick of a thumb,
Yeah.
or on YouTube, whatever. So it's a very different landscape, where it used to be one image was very special, and now it's like it's so easy to make so many images. So I think brilliance is coming out of it, and I don't know where it's going, but it's going so quickly now, and so much more people influencing each other and back and forth across different genres. That I think it's making people do better work.
Sure.
Has filmmaking become more style over substance? Yes. But I feel like there's always been good films and bad films, and it is easier to do. It's so much easier to do a cool shot than it is to tell an incredible story.
Sure.
But ideally, get to work on films where you can hopefully, integrate the two. And,
Yeah.
so,
Do you when you were coming up, did you have any like inspirations or maybe mentors that really stood out to you?
I regret I never really had a mentor, and that's something
Most people haven't, so I don't know if maybe regret is something you should feel, because it seems like all y'all amazing DPs, no one led you, no one held your hand on the way up.
yeah, I wish I did, and I didn't come up in a traditional way. So I'm an autodidact, and I'm not like really proud of that, but I would never have admitted that when I was starting out. But I taught myself, and I went to film school, but it was theory and criticism and history. And I'm actually glad that I studied film as literature versus film as technique.
Hmm.
I learned the technique later by doing it, and I wish I had a mentor. I've had some people that mentored me along the way. Like Russell Carpenter was a great teacher who I studied with at the main workshops, and went to him for advice after that. And that's about all I can, say.
Those main workshops are great.
Oh, just I don't know if they're still going, but
Yeah, no, Yedlin almost just did. I signed up for Yedlin's a few months ago, and then he had to cancel because he's working on some, which sucked. But
yeah, Yedlin's. I mean, genius. Really, I feel really stupid around him. So
I think everyone does. Just going on his website. I'm sure you've read articles
Uh,
on his website. It's
it's like
impossible.
I can't even follow it, but I get it, and it influences what I do. But God, it's a very different. He's just a genius, and I can't even hold a candle to anything that technically he's doing. It's just, I don't know, he's a whole nother level.
What is it like being in the ASC in regards to like the camaraderie? Because I know you're saying you didn't have any mentors, but I know mentorship is a large part of that group. Do you guys kind of mentor each other in any way, or is there like I know there's like hangouts, but I've never actually been to the clubhouse. I live in LA, but I've never actually been up there. What's that dynamic like?
Being in the ASC is a incredible, you know, thing, and something, as I was a struggling cinematographer, reading the magazine as a 20-year-old, I never thought I'd be, part of that group of people. And yes, you can call anybody up, and you just have access to all these incredible people. And yeah, we mentor each other, we call each other up, we support each other. It's very, it's just a lot of love there, and a lot of friendships, and it's just the access you have to this incredible group of people is I can't say enough about it.
Do you feel are you kind of like fangirling when you meet these people? Because I assume if you get the comma ASC after your name, you're like I belong here. But I know personally, if that were ever to happen to me, I'd be like, I don't know why I was invited.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've been in ASC, I think, for over a decade. I still feel like intimidated by some of the cats that walk in there, and I'm shy. It's like being at a high school party, and you're like shy to go talk to the popular guy, or
Yeah.
this guy just came in, and just shot this incredible movie, and you want to talk to him, but he's like surrounded by all these people, and it's just life. Um, um,
There's a something that I think affects everyone, regardless of art form, and that is a confidence in not only in yourself but in your craft. Do you remember if there was like a moment or maybe a project where you walked on set and you were finally like, you know what, I know that I can do this, and I'm not going to stress about it too much? Or is every shoot kind of like a new stress?
I think it took years and years and years of. I've been doing this for 25 years, and it took years and years and years of shooting to get to the point where I'm not completely freaked out the night before. Like I would, right in the early days, I would not, the night before the first day of shooting, I would not sleep. I
Yeah.
couldn't. And I still, when I work, I kind of live and breathe uh, the project. And I am in a kind of constant state of anxiety. But that is, I've learned from years that is who I am.
Hmm.
That's kind of makes me what I would like to think I'm good at what I do. And it's a drive also. Um, and I realize the anxiety is not necessarily, it's kind of maybe, um, there's some good things about it, and there's also some things that I need to maybe work on, like
Sure.
a disorder. But it's also like, don't fight it. It's part of who you are, and I can now go to sleep at night for the first day of work or before a big sequence, and you know but don't beat yourself up over being anxious about the work. If you're just walking in like, I'm Joe, cool, and maybe you're not taking it seriously. It's such a huge responsibility to shoot a movie, to be given the blessing and the support to shoot a film for somebody, that you gotta feel the weight of that. And so I think there's it's okay to be a little wound up, but also don't take yourself too seriously, and create an environment on set that people feel comfortable, that you're not like this crazy intense person that can't just like deal, and you gotta kind of just surf it, surf the anxiety and use it as the drive to make better choices, to really think through. I go to bed and I'm like replaying the entire day of shooting, and then advance playing what I'm going to do the next day and how I'm going to approach this, and then come in and hopefully be able to lean into it. And it's when I'm on set, it's almost like a trance. It's like a high, and I'm in this like creative space constantly, and for like 12 hours straight, and then I come home and
Yeah, the surfing it is a great way to describe that, because it's both something you're acutely aware of, but also can't think of. Like I've only surfed a couple times. I snowboard a lot, and I can't imagine ever thinking about snowboarding. I literally strap in and then just go, and then it's all, it's like you're finding targets that you need to avoid or hit if you're trying to have fun. But like it's not like, all right, now left foot forward, right foot back. Okay, am I standing correct? It's all feeling.
yeah, you can't. If you think about the left foot, then you're gonna crash into a tree.
Yeah.
You gotta instinctually know that the left foot is positioned in a way that can articulate the board, and but you're not thinking about it. And so yeah, I've never snowboarded, by the way, or
very
surfed.
fun. Give it a shot. You had mentioned being working for 12 hours a day, and I would kind of be remiss to not ask about this, because it's happening as we speak, more or less. But the IATSE strikes, people wanting to not work 12, 16-hour days, wanting better pay, and not having weekends taken from them. Were you? I assume you've experienced that kind of work environment. Has that made it difficult for you to have family or friends or anything like that? Have you kind of had to devote your life to the art form? Because I know every DP who's at a higher step than I has pretty much mentioned, like, don't assume you're going to have a family. This is your life now.
Yeah. God, there's so many things to talk about there, but first of all, I 100% support my IATSE brothers and sisters, and the crews that I work with, and I'm 100% behind this movement, and want to express solidarity with them, and pro strike. And the work hours are horrible, but I don't want to, I don't want to like it's a whole nother subject to get into, and then also having a life. I didn't have a life for many, many years, and now I have a wonderful wife, Tracy, and 6-year-old twins, and we all travel together on projects, and keep the family together. And this is unlike any other business, and it's it's all consuming, and it is very difficult to have a life. but I think it is possible. And but it's also a choice. It's a choice I've made to do this work, and I do it because I love it. And but now I realize it isn't everything, and it's you got to think about what you want to do while you're on this life, on this planet for this very, very short period of time.
Yeah.
And what's the most important thing? And the hours used to be much worse, so they've actually gotten somewhat better in some ways. And um, you know, keeping things under 14 hours was like a big deal. And so now we rarely go over 14, but I mean, 14 is, insane for most people.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not, you got to think about your mental health and your physical health and all these things. But there's a lot to talk about there. That's a big story, but
Yeah. Well, and the reason I ask is just because you're closer to it than I was talking to a Teamster last night, and I was asking him like the same question, because me going, yeah, I stand with IATSE is like a fucking tadpole coming out of the sink at a sushi restaurant and going, yeah, fuck them up. Like I have no, I have no skin in the game. I'm so far away from like a union set, and so I don't know how to like both support people who are doing a job that I would like to do, but also not seem like a complete dork. It's like people.
It's a fine line that cinematographers play, because we are below the line, but we're sort of right on the line, and we're leaders, and we need to support our crew. And because cinematography is not a one-man band, it's you are working with collaborating with a tremendous group of incredibly skilled people, union technicians in the United States, and they support us, and we support them. And I am them. I am a union member, and so I 100% support them. And it's not just about the hours, but it's about pay for streaming, which is even a bigger
because it's still considered new media, right? It's still we don't know. We don't know if it's going to work.
It's not. It's an interruptive business that's completely interruptive in a I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just it's right. Completely changed the entire business model in Hollywood, and it's not Hollywood anymore. Silicon Valley drives cinema now, and television. And television is not television. Television is streaming, and it's brought so much great work and so much great filmmaking, and all the people that made adult kind of dramas that are not action movies and have gone to streaming. It is a beautiful thing. Streaming is fantastic. Apple, Netflix, Amazon, HBO Max. I mean, this is golden age of filmmaking. So let's not. It's brought so much work. So it's just about finding the balance, and the struggle between labor and management is as old as
time itself.
Industrial revolution, and the birth of all these things. So this is nothing new, and it's about finding the balance.
The streaming age definitely has I never used to really be a TV show guy. If like the show was coming out and I could watch it, like Breaking Bad. I remember I was just out of college when that came out, and I was there for every episode. But kind of getting on topic with the movie you're here to promote, I never watched The Sopranos because I didn't have HBO, and it got too long for me to like go back and watch it all. I just felt like I didn't have the time. But now it's like, because it's all available, there's so many amazing shows, movies, but shows that are coming out on these streamers that are like fantastic, and they get the budget that like a film would have gotten, and it's so much fun to as a consumer.
And Sopranos was the show that broke peak television. And David Chase created an anti-hero, a non-conventional television series where sometimes in an episode nothing happens, but it's brilliant, where you can be empathic towards a character that is absolutely, a monster, but you can find something and connect with him. That led to characters like uh,
Walter.
Walter White. It led to characters like, The Wire, shows like um, Ozark.
Yeah.
It was groundbreaking show. So to have shot a prequel for that film was that show was a huge honor and a huge shoes to be filling. So
I was given the opportunity to go to the WB lot and catch a screener of the film. So
jealous. I really want to. I haven't seen it with an audience yet. I color timed it. I've watched it many times, but I've yet to make it to a cinema.
So I unfortunately come from two minds. One is I don't really know what was going on, and two, luckily I was there to kind of take notes on the cinematography. It looks fucking incredible, man. That first, did you have any photographic influences for like the 60s era? Because it has this very I got like Fred Herzog books and like Stephen Shore and stuff like that, and it has that kind of I guess low contrast. There's this very evenness to the color and to the lighting that is really pretty. And I was wondering how you kind of approached that first, maybe like third of the film.
Yeah. So there's two different looks in the movie. There is sort of the first part, which is 1960s, and then there's a kind of act break or time cut where Johnny gets out of prison, and you see the older Tony Soprano, who's Michael Gandolfini. So there's a time cut, or I don't know what the word, time transition to the 70s. And that was a different look. So I had two lookup tables that I built with my DIT, Matt Selkirk, or he built them. I have to do a Zoom call in 15 minutes, another Zoom call.
Okay, we'll hard out you.
If you want to continue it later, I'm happy to as well. But
oh yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. And that was based on Kodachrome for the 60s, and Ektachrome for the 70s. And but the Kodachrome can be a pretty contrasty stock. And I'm kind of leaning away from, in this picture, from the sort of really hard blacks. I was kind of going for sort of more like a silky veiled blacks. Kind of feel a little bit like the time period, and sort of something bring you into a feeling of the time where it's just not this sort of like hard blacks. And there's more color and more use of reds and golds and that kind of thing in the 60s. And yeah, sure, photographic, research, and people like Saul Leitner and that kind of thing. And films that I referenced were, Godfather 1 is kind of like
the Lodestar.
Sermon on the Mount. It's the North Star of gangster filmmaking. And Also, Harris Savides' work on the Yards and on American Gangster was a huge inspiration, and use of top light and tremendous amount of top light and just single source, very minimalist lighting approach, um, but working with a lot of color and color contrasts and
Because that is one thing. Like the, I guess that must have. I guess that's both costuming and probably the LUT. But there's this very defined color uniformity in each color. Skin tones are like kind of one thing. Shirts are like one thing, and it's very. It's just really pretty. And I was sitting there halfway, like throughout most of the film, like, fuck, I want to do this. Especially top light. Like all the top light looked really good. I'm a big fan of top light. What was like an average sort of setup for you? Like maybe in some of those interiors, like in the house and stuff like that. Or the prison scene was pretty as fuck.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Well, the prison
the visiting
was,
room.
Yeah. The visiting room was basement location of I think maybe a school in, can't remember where, in the New York metropolitan area. Maybe north. Anyway, I think very northern part of Manhattan or the Bronx. And it was top light, fluorescence, and just massive array of HMIs coming through the windows. I think through magic cloth, or no, it was hard, but just an array of I don't know if they were 6Ks, 9Ks, 4Ks. I can't remember. There's a whole bunch of them.
Sure.
And then the top light was, again, every set had soft boxes built over them, whether they were the house was a stage, and it was all just kind of all LEDs, all S60s everywhere through magic cloth. Top light, soft boxes were punching right through the muslin of the set ceilings, and just keeping it as simple as possible, but just single large soft sources, and that
Was
top, just trying to make things feel less keyed and more sort of ambient type lighting.
Was were you always shooting sort of in overcast, or was that managed somehow, or was that like maybe a digital effect? Because it seems like all the exteriors were incredibly even.
Yeah, that was a huge challenge. I thought, shooting in New York, I'd be like, oh, it's going to be overcast all the time because it's, the Northeast. And it was a tremendous amount of hard sun that I did not expect and got completely. There's a beach scene where I'm shooting in clouds, I'm shooting in sun, I'm shooting in clouds again. Sun's here, the sun's over there. We have people in the water. Cameras in the water. It was probably the most challenging scene I ever shot in my life, and we had to really muscle with it in the DI to get it all kind of sit in a place that felt like it's a slightly surreal looking scene. As a surreal moment.
Yeah.
And then the exteriors, it was very hard to use fly swatters. I was shooting in the outer boroughs, and in the outer boroughs of Manhattan, there's still power lines, telephone poles with power lines. So it's very hard to get a fly swatter in safely. So, so again, something just unexpected, because in Manhattan, there's no telephone poles. So it's all underground, all the power. But in the
Right.
outer boroughs, which is where you find places that look like New Jersey because things haven't changed there, whereas in anyway, and so you couldn't do fly swatters most of the time, and so we did some things with mattresses.
The
Uh,
floaty balloons.
yeah, like a balloon, uh, but for diffusion. You know,
Right.
I forgot the word, but it's like
Air
12.
mattress works for me.
Yeah, Air Star mattress shaped thing that you could kind of float over the actors and hold down with lines. But it's tricky as soon as you get a gust of wind and you have, but it was, we did as much as we could to control the light and feel like it was overcast. And sometimes we got lucky with overcast light. And just, definitely the vibe we were going for was overcast.
Yeah. Well, because I was watching the whole thing and I was like, damn, did they really schedule like? Because you can't. Was there any like digital sky replacement or anything, or was it all just like you kind of picked your angles and figured it out?
With all picking the angles. And definitely there is maybe tiny bit of sky replacement, maybe one shot. There is also a shot on the beach scene where we lengthened the shadow to make it look like it was later in the day. I think one shot because the light was suddenly hard and super toppy, and they're walking. We actually changed the shadow to
Wow.
make it look, yeah. But it's not. We did not have a huge visual effects budget, so it's not like, oh my god, every shot's been reworked. It's in camera.
That's awesome.
It's choosing, working with your first AD to schedule stuff. It's a huge.
Yeah.
It's a management thing, but it helps you find your art. Like I said, we're a crew, and you can't do it by yourself without managing the whole machine to uh, get the right time of day. There's so many moving parts with the actors schedules and this and that, and the kid turns into a pumpkin at after 6 hours,
Right.
you know all this stuff.
One thing I did want to talk about is I really like the approach that you took in the film to the night scenes. They looked stylized, but at the same time very like classic. And I was wondering if you had a generalized sort of, I guess, approach to shooting the night scene, specifically the riot scene. I thought looked really compelling, I suppose.
Yeah, the approach to nights. I'm always looking for a way to shoot nights that looks less lit and kind of feels more environmental than like a big backlight and a front light. And um, sometimes it's just hard to do that uh, in a especially on a real practical location. The riot scenes of night exterior work was shot on a real location in New Jersey, in Newark, New Jersey, very close to where the riots happened, if not where they actually happened. Um, and we built all the storefront, built into all the storefronts, period, correct. It was like a 4 block, you know, 4-way intersection, and every way you looked was beautifully art directed by our production designer, Bob Shaw, a big movie marquee with, real bulbs, tungsten bulbs lit into it. I use a lot of LEDs, but in this case, I did have giant backlights, which were condors with maxi brutes, two 12 light maxi brutes, and or maybe three, and on dimmers that were kind of brought down and sort of had like this giant warm backlight that kind of blended with the fires. And that was kind of my approach for and they're on all 4 ways, so any way you looked, and sometimes you could even crossfade from one condor to another, so the backlight stayed as a backlight. Um, and I can't remember if I had balloons or how I did the ambient sort of. I had lights on top. Now I'm remembering lights on tops of buildings,
Hmm.
um, because it was very hard to use condors or balloons because of power lines, and so we had sky panel 360s on rooftops, um, and just trying to make it feel like it's of part of the environment versus like a lit night scene. And then we changed out all the street lights
Oh
to
wow.
period correct Cobra heads from the time, and inside the Cobra heads, I can't remember what we did, if we switched out or we clamped on, par cans onto the Cobra heads and then painted them out later in post. I'm trying to remember exactly. Each location is a little bit different, but that kind of thing. And then lights, inside storefronts, and lots of fire sources, which would be
Right.
sky panel 360s with a fire effect built into them. Um, and sometimes real flame bars and real fire happening in a frame.
Have you shot anything where you did like maybe replace the street lights and then ended up using like real high pressure sodium or anything like that? Because that always reminds me of like nighttime back in the day, but the color rendition obviously is crap, and digital cameras don't like it.
Yeah, I've definitely done that, and used high pressure sodium. I felt like even though high pressure sodium vapors may have actually existed in the 60s, I felt like street light should be white, and it feels like cleaner and more period and more kind of black and whitish,
Hmm.
versus a kind of like warm colors. But I've done a lot of stuff with real sodium vapors, and um, they're just really challenging to control, and but they look great because they kind of have that sort of dirty light quality to them. And I'm always trying to get something that's dirtier and not so clean movie looking. And I've done things more recently where I'm using either digital Sputniks inside of Cobra heads, which weren't quite punchy enough. I did a thing recently with acorn lights, which are like the street lights that are shaped
Yeah.
like acorns that you see on the East Coast, and putting four Nix bulbs inside those, which are Astera NYXs. And then most recently on a location, we put 2K bulbs, 2K tungsten bulbs inside of a Cobra head, which is sort of the old school way to do it. And it looks pretty great.
Yeah. Um, Going from like the exteriors to the interiors, like even in those nighttime scenes, but in general, I noticed there was a very sort of, uh, cool blue, very specific blue look to a lot of those nighttime interiors versus a lot of the film is quite warm. Were you, obviously that, well, I guess I should ask, or is that just a straight tungsten daylight kind of difference and then it's pulled out in the grade, or were you gelling, using a lot of gels or something like that?
Um, uh, it's there wasn't a lot of gelling happening because I don't uh, need to gel that much with LEDs.
Sure.
One of the beauties of them, but there is a lot of mixed light, which I love to use. But the way the light rendered in the lookup table had this really, mixing warm tungsten interiors with very cold backlight. And that to me is just the way things really look, and the way old film stocks would not handle mixed colors as well. And I kind of want it. So the outside would go kind of, instead of blue, it would go kind of cyan. And the inside, instead of going warm, it would kind of go what we would call like a Jersey yellow, which is sort of
Hmm.
like dirtier, kind of more like um, photographic, photochemical kind of way of handling kind of not perfect color. So there's a lot of the colorist Peter Doyle, he nicknamed it Jersey Yellow. and then the outsides would go kind of green. And even when we were on stage, which is the house location, which was Tony Soprano's row house, was the entire build. And I'd light the outside, the backing, overexposed because you see like the neighbor's house. He actually built the neighbor's house next door, like
Oh
a
wow.
facade of it, and even like a window with a bulb in it that you could see out. And that was kind of lit cold blue if it was day and overexposed. And you could just barely make out that there's a house there. And as you would if you're exposed for the inside. And then lit with tungsten on the inside. And just
Yeah.
lots of mixed color.
Yeah. So one thing that I've always been fascinated by, especially recently, is the use of mixed color, and specifically the interplay between how you, I guess not rate your camera, but what you set your camera's white balance to versus what you set the lights to. Because, like you said, LEDs, you can really move it around. So you don't have to be at 32 and 56. You can be at 27 and 65 or 27 and 56 or whatever. How did you go about handling that? Were you just kind of rating it like 43, 4500 and letting the sources kind of be standard, or were you trying to pull that apart more?
If it's a day interior and I'm on stage, it really depends on the location, but generally I would rate it camera at 3200 and let the outside go blue and the inside go tungsten. If I was feeling unsure, you go 43 because it's like you can go anywhere you want, but it almost doesn't matter where you set the camera because it's metadata
Mm,
and it's going to be, you can slip it around, but where you put your sources is critical. And the farther you spread them apart, the harder it is to get them. If you want to change your mind, you can't. So
oh,
I sometimes spread them really far apart, like 2200 for the tungsten and 8,000 for so you really have but then you built in this huge mix. And yes, you can slip your color temperature around, but I generally don't change my color temperature um, to a middle ground. I keep it either one extreme or the other, and mostly around 3,200, depending.
sure.
You got to give me a
Um,
specific scene, but yeah.
but yeah, I mean, I'd have to. That's the one thing that sucks about seeing screeners without like the one nice thing about seeing them at home was like I could pause it and like take a picture with my cell phone or like screenshot it and like memorize, because some of these notes, like right here I have beach lighting. All right, we talked about that yesterday. Christmas tree colors. No idea what I meant by that. So yeah, it's a little troublesome sometimes to remember. I was reading the little sort of blurb you had in the American Cinematographer magazine about your influences, and a lot of cinematographers cite Caravaggio and whatnot. And you were saying that you were really into that sort of very contrasty, deep shadow look, and then kind of transitioned out of that. Was that due to sort of modern sensibilities, modern technology, soft lighting becoming more in vogue, or was that more of like a professional thought process and change? Because this film is very pretty even and soft.
Yeah, I feel like it's just how I evolved as a person, but also seeing, influenced by other things around me. It's like, I feel like to try and make everything look like Caravaggio and never change is sort of, you grow as a person. And it's like, yeah, I really love really dark blacks and really bright whites. I mean, of course I do. And sometimes it's good, but if you just do that all the time on everything, then you want to kind of feel the material and feel what feels right. And I wanted to feel like you're back in a time period, but you're not in a Caravaggio painting. You're in 1960s Newark in some sort of, somewhat uh, intense, row housing neighborhood that, you're in there shooting with a Leica and some Kodachrome in your camera, or, it's what is it going to feel like? Does it feel like, Christ on the cross, or does it feel
Right.
like, no, I mean, it's like, and I feel like I just evolved as an artist, and I'd like to think of myself as an artist, and I feel like I evolved in you know deep, crushy blacks and a shaft of light, single shaft of light, a la Greg Tolland is amazing, but sometimes it's just calling attention to yourself too much. Sometimes it's just about maturing as a person, let alone a cinematographer. It's like, um, I want to use my voice in more subtle ways and more nuanced ways, and taking cues from somebody as restrained as David Chase, who, writes, you could write these gangster stories any kind of way, really on the nose, or you could be really subtle and existential. And that is kind of more what I feel like he was going for. It's like, what you walk away from the movie is, do you learn a lot about the evolution of these characters? Yes, you do, but you also kind of walk away feeling like, what does it all mean? What does any of this mean? It's kind of a question being asked in the movie.
Yeah.
And what does deep blacks mean? Why every time?
Yeah. And certainly you could, like you're saying, like your Godfathers or whatever, you could, that would change the vibe sort of the story. I wonder, I'm interested in your opinion. Do you feel like, because if a young cinematographer starting out, real talented person was able to be that sort of delicate with their lighting and delicate with their work, would that then make it harder for them to stand out coming up, especially nowadays with, it's kind of like the flashiest thing gets the most attention for the 10 seconds anything gets attention these days?
You want to do something that's appropriate in the time that you're in, and if in the time that you're in, you want to stand out. uh I don't know if doing Caravaggio lighting even stands out anymore. It's like, it's people have seen it.
Yeah.
uh you want to maybe do something where you explore color, or you mix color temperatures, which is kind of like, and do like subtler, I feel like you want to build a real look and a vibe. And I'd like to think that that's, where that movie went. um you want to do something where it's, yeah, you want to stand out, but you can stand out in other ways than doing Caravaggio lighting, and but you can also stand out by doing that, because it is very, it just jumps off the page, or off the screen, I should say.
Yeah. Well, and
That was a tough question.
yeah, I'm
Kenny,
sorry.
you're breaking my balls.
Sorry. Well, the thing I was thinking was like, at my level, which is relatively low, it's always like I'll get clients who are like, "Can we just get a drone?" I was editing this thing the other day that I shot that they ended up not using at all, and we spent months on it because there just wasn't enough drone shots. And I was being like, I was pretty proud of the. It was, it was to sell an apartment complex, but I was pretty proud of, or not to sell it, but to get people to live there. And I was pretty proud of like the cinematography I did, but the guy just kept going like, "Can we get more drone shots in there?" And then we just kept putting drone shots in there because he thought that was like the cool way to be, for him to be seen.
Right.
And I found that frustrating. And that's kind of more where I was going, like,
It's
that's
the same thing
standing out.
though. Drones have become so ubiquitous that I don't even, like, now I'm watching something, I don't, okay, drone, it's great, it's incredible. 10 years ago, you would not have been able to do that on anything, let alone a real estate video. And now it's like, you see it, and see it everywhere. So it's, you got to do something, powerful with the drone. Is it like starting outside and going through the window and through, I saw this one drone video that's in a bowling alley.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh my God. I want to do that on the film I'm on now, but you can't, because there's safety issues with around actors and drones. But to be able to have the drone, fly around the space like a, superhero is incredible. And
The
that would be dope.
It would. But I also think like that kind of speaks to a theory I've had, which is, and going more to saying that I like the way you've handled the film better than trying to stand out, so to speak, is that a more mature sensibility to anything begets sort of the idea that someone knows what they're doing versus the bowling alley video. Very impressive, but perhaps flashy for no reason. We learned that the drone pilot's really cool, but if that was supposed to sell the bowling alley, I don't know what the bowling alley was called. I don't know if
Right.
what was that video for, you know?
Yeah, it was a demo of ability. It was a
Yeah.
proof of concept, and it was, I thought it was virtuosic.
It was
Uh,
amazing. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, like whoever that drone pilot was, he's a virtuoso, and he's probably, a 23-year-old kid and is, whatever. I have no idea. Or he could be a military pilot. I have no idea. You don't know on the internet what stuff is.
The other
That,
thing too about that video,
that
the
was
sound design.
military precision and the sound design. Yeah. And you just don't think about it, but that was, you know, that was the avant-garde of filmmaking to me. And to integrate that into a narrative would be incredible.
Oh yeah, I mean, just to get it out of the way because everyone's going to want to know, what was your just camera and lens package on there, and what was kind of the thought process specifically in the lenses with going through there? Because it is a relatively clean film, but you can tell that the anamorphics are doing some fun stuff there.
It is Panavision T series anamorphics that were detuned to look like C series, or tuned to look like C series. By Dan Sasaki, and it is a Alexa LF, Studio LF, because at the time we couldn't get a mini LF. They weren't quite out yet. This was 2 years ago, and there was just like a few of them, and we couldn't get one on time. And so for the Steadicam, unfortunately, my Steadicam operator had to fly the studio, which was a bit of
no.
And we also had a regular mini that I said, you can just use that for something. He's like, and he did in the beginning. And then he was like, wanted to, keep the large format. So Mike Heathcote, Steadicam operator extraordinaire. Yeah, that was the kit. And then we, did a lot of stuff to massage texture into the image through the glass, through the lookup tables, through the adding of a company called Live Grain, through the addition of gate weave, which I talked about before. I don't know if I did or not, and all kinds of tricks that Peter Doyle massaged into the image.
Do you find that you're obviously the LF is a gorgeous camera, and large format sensors are becoming more and more ubiquitous. Do you find that that is a look that you really would like to stick to, and sort of Super 35 is great, but I like the LF thing, or is it more just like a situational choice?
I think for the big screen, the big sensors are great. I feel like I shot a lot of movies on regular 35 sensors, and that were like great. And so I wasn't shooting those and thinking, oh my God, I need a larger sensor. It just it's like, when they came out with the iPad, nobody was thinking, oh my God, I need an iPad. They created something nobody needed, and then all of a sudden everybody needed it. So it's fantastic. It allows all kinds of different options optically. It's also very challenging optically, and it also kind of forces you to learn all of your lenses, because you're so used to, a 50 millimeter lens is this, and now it's like, well, a 50 millimeter lens in 3.2, 6K, this size sensor, this size. There's like everything is sort of, all the formats are kind of all over the place now, but it's okay. You kind of start to find your hero lens again. And that would probably be a 40 millimeter anamorphic in large format, which is very, very wide, but still has a kind of normalcy to it.
Yeah, the one nice thing, because like I said, this is C500s with large format, and slapping an anamorphic on there does really, like, that extra height real estate really does keep the integrity of the image while still giving you that anamorphic look, instead of stretching out little guy. The half hour goes so fast. I like to wrap up before I do, I really wanted to say Chef is one of my favorite movies of all time. Uh, so great job on that. Yeah, I just had to throw that out there. I like to end every podcast kind of asking the same couple questions, and it has changed recently, but you haven't heard the podcast, so it doesn't matter. You won't notice.
I will now. I will.
Yeah.
In the end,
So the first question being, what is a piece of advice, whether it be in the past or recently, that really stuck with you, that maybe appreciably changed the way you approach your job or maybe even your life, but cinematography? And then secondly, what is a film that you think more people should see, or just something that you'd recommend someone go grab on Blu-ray and check out, besides obviously the film you're promoting?
I think a piece of advice, maybe personal advice, is don't take yourself too seriously. And, sometimes, nose to the grindstone approach to being a cinematographer. You're looking down all the time, or you're too myopic to see the big picture, around me. Even sometimes I'll just like walk a circle around the set, around the sound stage, or even go around the block and come back, and you see like all this infrastructure and condors and power and people that are there, supporting this vision that you're trying to pull. And it's like you're part of it's a collaborative art form. It's team based. Even on the smallest, most humblest projects, even if I'm like running around with a documentary style crew or that kind of thing, it's sometimes you just get your nose so into the frame that you don't see, and you miss stuff, and you miss the big picture. It's like so just don't take it so seriously, and don't be so myopic in your approach, and that is philosophically, and it's also practically. So, and a film that people should see that maybe they haven't seen is Meshes in the Afternoon by Maya Deren, the director. And it was, are you aware, do you know the film, or are you familiar with it?
No.
It's an experimental film shot in the 1930s, probably on a Bolex, maybe on 35 millimeter film. And it's so ahead of its time. Maya Deren was a mythical filmmaker and a dancer. And she was at the time married to or dating or something, a cinematographer, Hollywood cinematographer whose name I forgot. Maybe it was Boris Kaufman. And they lived in the Hollywood Hills, and in their house they shot this experimental film that is so ahead of its time. It's sort of the equivalent of the drone video. I feel like it is it has no narrative, but it is it's surreal. And it's a short film, and you just look up her as a person and her work, and she's beyond amazing. And
That's awesome.
About, female filmmakers, and she was way ahead of the curve.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love asking that question, because most people end up saying a movie I've never seen, and then I just go pick it up on Blu-ray or whatever.
Yeah, I wasn't. Sometimes I'll say, people are like, oh yeah, of course, yeah, Meshes in the Afternoon, whatever. But I know that different generations, different crowds. It's like, oh, I should maybe never heard of that one. Okay, check it out.
Well,
and as you guys know, stuff that I had no idea about. So,
well, and I've said this before on the podcast, but I grew up as a nerd, but also not like a film nerd. So I was watching, Men in Black and The Mask and stuff, and those were like the movies that I loved. So I had never seen like a Criterion film until maybe 5 years ago when I finally started to take things seriously,
And now you have an app, so you can see the Criterion. Isn't that the one? The Criterion.
They have like a streamer. They have like a streamer, but I just buy the Blu-ray. I'm still a big physical media guy because the special features.
But there is a Criterion. I think Criterion came out.
No,
yeah, which is just incredible that you can just have it all. Yeah, I love physical media too. But I would love to have a 35 millimeter projector in my Spanish mansion in the
right.
else.
Speaking of that, actually, follow-up question apropos of nothing. How much free tequila do you get?
A decent amount. Talking about the tequila thing I shot?
Yeah.
The Maestro Dobel video?
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah. I got a decent amount, and I'm a huge fan. And again, that I was thinking of that experience when you said, I went to Mexico and shot this thing for a friend. There was like 12 of us total driving around in a, something smaller than a Sprinter van, and an Alexa Mini, and an assistant, a sound person, the producers, and maybe one gaffer type person, somebody that had a drone, and we had a blast. But and I'm like in the video, and then there's somebody shooting a thing, and I'm in the video, and I'm shooting the video, I don't know, whatever you call it. It was branded content, and meeting chefs and going around Mexico, shooting this amazing architectural house in Mexico with the colors. And it was, I had a blast, but you also you can get you just don't forget you're like having this great trip in Mexico too. Don't just have fun doing it.
Yeah. It's a really pretty spot. It's only whatever, like a minute or two, but it's I was wondering if you had shot it or if they were just like, we hear you love tequila, so come on over.
It was a friend of mine who is a very good friend of mine named Rodolfo Villalobos, who's a brand, does branding for them. He's an advertising executive, and he was like, "We just come to, just for fun, And he's also friends with the owner of Maestro Dobel, who is the owner of the big tequila company, Cuervo.
Gotcha.
It's his personal brand. So it was really a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming back and spending an extra half hour with me. I really, really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Loved this conversation. Next time you have a movie coming. You're working on a film right now, right?
I am. And I'd love to talk about Respect sometime too, if you want to.
Oh, no. Yeah. Actually, I was looking at the AMC app. I'm like, you know what? My Sunday opened up. I should just go check that out and then send you an email and be like, so got some more questions.
Be that, man.
Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks again, man. That was really awesome.
Peace.
We'll be in touch.
Thank you.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by Pro Video Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F&R Mattbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.